Okay, go ahead.
You want me to just jump in then? Okay.
Go ahead. Yep. Introduce yourself and introduce Chris. And
All right. Welcome, everyone. We're super glad you're here to learn a little bit more about YLA Communities. So just as background information, my name's Amanda Hansen. I currently live in Ephraim, Utah, and my family and I have been homeschooling for around 22 years. And during this journey of ours, as we've kind of moved around the state, we've just learned a lot about different methods of homeschooling, different things that our families needed. And I just have a lot of background and experience in building communities, and YLA Communities is what I'm currently doing. And it's just growing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We also have Chris Jones with us tonight. We've invited him here because Chris is the mentor of all mentors, and he's experienced a lot of different styles of education and been involved in mentoring in many places with many students. And he's kind of a firsthand witness of what we're going to talk about here with YLA Scholar Schools. So I'm going to kind of give an intro overview, and then I'll turn a little bit of time over to Chris to talk to that a little bit. First of all, I'm going to share my screen here. We currently have 5 YLA communities that are about to spring up here in Utah. Let me see if I can figure this out. Slideshow. All right. Can you see all that? Is that showing up, Cass? Give me a thumbs up if that's good. Okay, fabulous. So as a leader in homeschooling communities for the past 15 plus years, I've learned a lot. And homeschooling 5 of my own children, I've learned a lot. I now have 3 adult children and 2 still in the dregs of high school and middle school. And years and years ago, when I started out, I was handed a book called The Thomas Jefferson Education. And really, that was kind of something that resonated with me and got me started on what I felt was important for my kids as far as education was concerned in what is called leadership education or a liberal arts education. It's nothing new, but it's something that we've lost. And Oliver DeMille, he's the founder of the Thomas Jefferson Education model and book. His path kind of, I think, is important to understand too. He set out to kind of figure out his own personal life mission, and his personal life mission is to promote freedom. But on his journey to freedom, what he found was most important was the education of those who were promoting freedom. That the reason that they could promote freedom and maintain it was because of their education, and specifically the way that they were educated. And the way that people were educated long before public school, long before private school, and way long before charter schools came along, people were educated with mentors in a private setting, usually in a home. And so he started down this path, learned a lot about Thomas Jefferson in particular and other founding fathers in America who were educated in this way, in a liberal arts mentoring education path. And because of that education, they became the men they were and did the things they did, and they served our country and the world in meaningful ways. So really, when we're talking about Thomas Jefferson education, we're talking about leadership education. It's not necessarily a how-to book. It's more of a why. It's a principle, not necessarily a method. So a lot of people, I feel like, either kind of have a love or a hate relationship with the word TJ Ed or Thomas Jefferson education for various reasons. Sometimes groups spring up and call themselves TJ Ed groups, and then they, upset people because of the way they do things or something, whatever. But really, we use the Thomas Jefferson education as a platform for YLA communities simply because the principles are true. The principles of good education don't necessarily change. The hows do within all different methods of education. But what I found is that TJ Ed principles mesh really well with just about anything else. With Charlotte Mason, with Well-Educated Heart, with the House United, with the Good and the Beautiful, whatever curriculum, whatever method, whatever you're doing at home, the principles outlined in a Thomas Jefferson education probably fit somewhere within whatever else you're doing. And so Youth Leaders for America, and I'm just going to read this, Youth Leaders for America are communities of homeschooling families dedicated to giving homeschool youth and families a place to belong, learn, and thrive together. We join for shared educational experiences based on the leadership education model and principles outlined in A Thomas Jefferson Education by Oliver DeMille. We work together to support, not replace the family as the center of learning, and we honor each individual as the steward of their own education. As a non-denominational Christian group, we welcome all who uphold principles of faith, freedom, and family unity. All right, let me see if this is going to move for me. There we go. All right, so our mission really is just to raise up youth who love learning, work hard, embody a moral foundation of truth, virtue, compassion, liberty, and courage, who will be prepared to lead, uphold faith and freedom, and positively impact the world for good. We do this by providing youth classes, social activities, and service opportunities within the community. So really, a YLA community is just a group of homeschool families that we get together to support our youth. And really the center of a YLA community is what we call a scholar school. That term comes from a Thomas Jefferson education, which is why we always ask our parents to read the Thomas Jefferson education book, not because I think it's the only way to do things, not because I think everyone has to follow everything it says, simply because it gives you a vision of what Scholar Phase is about and how the scholar school fits into what youth need as they grow older. I'm going to move along. Something that we're adopting as a community at large, because we have 5 new groups showing up. So now we have a location in Logan, Draper, Mount Pleasant, Ephraim, and Richfield. They will all be opening in the fall. Mount Pleasant is the only group that's currently running. All the rest are brand new. And we're just expecting that it's going to continue to grow. The model works. We've been doing it for a long time, and Chris and Beth and Cassie can speak to that as well. What we're doing is just kind of getting it to a place where we can share it and pass it on so that others can also benefit from this model. But something that we're adopting as a group are some core values. We welcome and value all people as children of God, view their thoughts and feelings as real and valid as our own. Oh, goodness. You can tell I'm really good at this. We communicate openly and honestly. We face challenges with optimism. We respect local and general leaders of all churches and speak of them with words of support and encouragement. We embrace the process of learning, humbly respect the educational choices of others, and encourage them in their journey. We learn together. We challenge assumed facts and opinions and go to the primary source to understand truth. In all our interactions, we seek, uphold, and value light, lift, inspire, guard, help, and trust. So these are some things that we uphold as a community and will be working together on. In YLA Communities, we're not a school in the fact that we're providing all the education. Parents are still the primary educators of their children. We're here to support, not replace the education. And that's something I think really needs to be understood. Even though we're a drop-off situation for youth most of the time, we're still not a school. We're just a community of families. And parents, you're responsible for the education of your children still. All right. Oh goodness, I gotta move this really quick. Can't see. Okay. The most effective way to ensure the quality of their education is to consistently improve your own. This is by Oliver DeMille. This goes back to one of the keys, which is you, not them, which is if you want your kids to gain education, if you want them to do something, then you're going to need to also mirror that yourself, right? That example is really critical. Oh goodness, it doesn't want to go now. There we go. We are 100% responsible for our own education. Let the students take the lead as often as we can. We want our youth to be able to grow up, to be independent, to be responsible, to be capable. And the leader part, right? Our youth leaders for America. The name came about because we really feel like our country is going in a tricky direction and we would like it to be better in the future. And we need to raise up leaders who can help make that happen. So we do focus on that a little bit, on helping our youth be the kind of people. And if that means to be the best mother and father, to be the best community organizer, to be in whatever situation they're in, to be a positive influence in their communities, in their homes, in their work, in their country. All men who have turned out worth anything have had the chief hand in their own education. That was Sir Walter Scott, which is so true. And with YLA Communities, we really want our youth to be owning their own education. We talk about that a lot, but what does that look like? Well, when they're 14, 15 years old, they can come up with their own education plan, figure out how many hours a day they're going to study, and we as parents can kind of take a sidestep and not be the taskmaster so much anymore, but step to the side and be the one saying, hey, what can I do to support you? What are you working on this week? And the more we can give them, the more ownership that they have, the more they're going to do, the more responsibility they're going to take for themselves, and the better work they're going to produce. Oliver DeMille said, teachers teach and students educate. Students are the only true educators. Free choice is an essential part of learning to think. So we do run on a freedom model and a free market, not only for our mentors, but also for our students. We really want them to choose their own classes, choose their educational path, and then choose to do the work. There's a lot of great principles that are in the Well-Educated Heart methods of learning that fit so perfectly with Thomas Jefferson education, especially when it comes to core and love of learning phases. I'm not going to talk a ton about that, but mostly just your core phase is something you start with. It's your foundation of all other learning and who you become. That is, who am I? Why am I here? How do I fit into my family? Just the basics. And Well-Educated Heart, I feel like, continues to build upon that core and love of learning forever, for the rest of your life. But a lot of people resonate with the Well-Educated Heart ideas, and they fit right in with what we do at YLA. We use the method of the 4Ring to discover truth principles related to ourselves and act in a way that it is recorded in our hearts. We research the what, reason, so what, relate, now what, record, remember. So we see, we feel, we do. This is kind of a little motto that our Ephraim team came up with, which I felt like was really good. There is but one straight course, that is to seek truth and pursue it steadily. That was by George Washington. Through education, we can be prepared to live lives of maximum joy and freedom, become leaders, and make a difference in society. And that's really like the heart of our mission at YLA. And then I love this last part. We are teaching children to make a life, not just a living. And I know most of us as homeschool families, we've chosen homeschool for a reason. And I feel like a lot of it can disseminate down to this. We really want our kids to make a life, to have a beautiful life, to know who they are, and to be confident in who they are and know how to learn and not just make a living. Gandhi said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. And really, YLA kind of came about because of this one thing. There was a need in my family. My kids, as they got older, they needed more than just mom. They needed mentors. They needed a second witness. They needed a group of people who could put their arms around them and love them and teach them and mentor them in ways that I couldn't provide in my home. And as they grew into these scholars that we call them, these teenagers, they needed more than mom could give. And that's really when I found my first group of people who were following the TJ Ed model and found the gift of mentoring. And I'm actually going to turn some time over for a minute to Chris to talk a little bit about what is mentoring versus just teaching, and how does a mentor differ from a regular professor or a teacher in the classroom?
Thank you for that. I have a little bit of an unorthodox opinion and perspective on this because I have done this about all the ways that you can do it. I've taught in public schools. I was educated in public schools myself. I have taught in charter schools, homeschool co-ops, on-school situations, homeschooled my own children for short periods as well, and spent significant amounts of time trying to figure out what my job is, actually. I currently teach at a private school, an LDS-based private school, Leahona Preparatory Academy in Pleasant Grove in Utah. I also teach at a homeschool co-op that's not really anymore a co-op, it's just my class that I teach up in Idaho every other week. And I also teach at Mount Liberty College, which is an extension of the principles that Amanda's just elucidated on the collegiate level. something that I think has been sorely needed for a very long time, honestly. We get a lot of parents who get really excited about making sure that their kids have a solid foundation in education and a liberal arts education, and then they send them off to the most conveyor belty schools that God ever conceived of. And so just at the point when they're in a place where they would be able to actually synthesize this information and begin to make a difference in the world, we stick them in 37,000 student massive institutions that could not care less about them and think that we've done them a service. I find that utterly and totally incomprehensible. It makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And yet I see it all the time. So it's been my privilege to teach the first 4 years at Mount Liberty College, which in some ways is the successor to Oliver Mills, DeMille's attempt with George Wythe College. The founders of the school attended and or taught at George Wythe College once upon a time. So it's very much a similar sort of enterprise. I went to BYU, a massive impersonal institution that did not care one bit about me until I dropped out of the major curriculum programs and ended up in classics and studied Roman history. There were 20 students in the classics program in the Roman side of the classics department and another 15 maybe in the Greek department. So I spent my last 2 years at Brigham Young University, two and a half years at Brigham Young University in about as small a group, as close to a homeschool environment, as close to a liberal arts education environment as you could possibly find at BYU. I bleed blue. I am a Cougar. I love BYU. And so far have succeeded in sending 0 of my children to there, which I feel pretty good about, to be perfectly honest with you. Not that if they want to go, sweet, that's up to them. But for most of them, when they took a look at what it is that they wanted to learn and how they wanted to learn it, it didn't really line up with the way that Brigham Young University or BYU Idaho or any of those of the other available options, at least the immediately available options, did. As I mentioned at the beginning, one of my biggest difficulties, and I apologize if I'm a little bit disjointed this evening. I've been teaching since 8 o'clock this morning, and in one place or another, one venue or another, online, etc. Wednesday is my long day, so I usually don't get off work until off teaching until 5 or 6 p.m. And then today I had another meeting for a homeschool group in North Carolina that I had to take care of, and so and I'm glad to be here, but I'm probably not at my sharpest. Because I teach at a private school now, there are certain restrictions, certain things that the private school demands. Leahona is a non-traditional private school in terms of its theological basis. We teach a restoration education, so I don't have to check my Jesus at the door, which I love. That's an absolutely wonderful environment for me. I love teaching there, and I gave up quite a bit in order to be able to do that. I haven't regretted it at all. But there's a constant tension between the things that many parents, not to say most, but many parents at our school believe constitutes an education, and what I believe constitutes an education, which has essentially nothing to do with tests or worksheets or assessments or exit tickets or whatever today's edu-speak is calling it. I did not get a teaching license. My wife has one, and she teaches at a charter school, teaches middle school math at a charter school. Now I've never had a teaching license. Both my father and my mother teach still. My mother will turn 83 this fall, and my father will turn 80 in May, and both of them are still actively teaching. My father teaches at Mount Liberty College, in fact, with me, teaches the most difficult class at the school. But we have always sort of tried to figure out what is the point, what is it that we do as teachers. I think Oliver DeMille has it pretty well correct. When he talks about the only educators are the students, this is a little counterintuitive for a lot of students who are used to having their hand held or been told, here's what we're going to learn now, to arrive in my history class and find that I tell them that I don't know what we're going to learn now. I have a thing that I think I would like to teach, but very often I don't end up teaching that. We end up in a discussion about some of the principles involved. For instance, right now, just as an example, we are dealing with the New Deal and the Great Depression. I had a blizzard of statistics, all sorts of pieces of legislation proposed by FDR and passed by the Congress from his inauguration in 1933 until the entrance of the United States into World War II in December of 1941. And over the course of that 8 years, of course, there's hundreds of pieces of legislation, there's all this kind of stuff, and I'm all prepared to talk about that if that's what they want to talk about. But what they wanted to talk about was what they should have done instead. Why did the Depression hang on for really until Hitler jollied everybody in the world out of it by blowing up a bunch of stuff? Surely there's a better way out of the Depression than that. I mean, surely we have a better understanding of economic theory than that. But as it turns out, we really don't. We were looking at we investigated the principles of John Maynard Keynes and his insistence that in the case of an economic downturn, you should use deficit spending to prime the pump, essentially, to get the economy moving again. Now, Keynesian economics, not to get deeply into the weeds, we start talking about Keynesian economics and does it work? And why, in this case, did it not work? Did they not do enough of it? Did they do too much of it? And so there was a lot of discussion back and forth about what would the students do? If I'm going to put you in FDR's position, what are you proposing to the nation? Well, a lot of really interesting ideas. As you might imagine, being an LDS school, it's a very politically conservative school, and yet almost all of the students began by saying, well, we've got an unemployment problem and a housing problem. Let's use the unemployed people to build a bunch of housing so that everybody has a job and everybody has a place to live. And I said, that sounds fantastic. What happens when you do that? And they said, well, we don't know. Nobody tried it. I said, that's not true. People have been trying it for 50 years. What happens when they do? And they stared at me and said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, that seems like a silly thing to propose then. Why are you proposing something when you could know if it was a good idea? Well, I just thought of it. I'm like, great. Okay, well, how about looking it up? So they look it up and they come back and they say, well, that doesn't work at all. I said, that's correct. It doesn't work at all. Why not? And around we went. When I'm visited by other members of the faculty, when they come to my class, it might surprise you to find that my class is the most popular one in the school. It is the most subscribed, and there are by far the largest number of students who take only one class take my class. That may not come as a surprise to you, but they typically will ask me, well, what was your lesson plan for this? I say, well, I really didn't have a lesson plan. I had some slides and some information, and I had a question that I wanted to start the class with. And frequently we never get past that question. And they said, well, aren't you worried that they're not going to know what the CCC is or the Tennessee Valley Authority, or be able to identify the minimum wage or the Labor Standards Reform Act of 1938? And I said, you don't know what any of those things are either, and you seem to be living a fairly joyful and happy life without knowing that. They said, yeah, but you do know it. And I say, yes, I know it because I have to teach it. Because if they ask me what they did, I have to know. But as you notice, I never brought it up. It never came up during class today. So for me, what I decided a long time ago was my job as a mentor. And if you're going to operate as a mentor in this kind of a situation, I'm warning you right now, you are in for one of the most difficult jobs that you could possibly have. Not only will you have to know everything there is to know, or know where to go to find it, or be really good at making sure that you deflect the question onto the student who asked it so that he goes and finds it, or she digs the information up and then you nod sagely as if you knew it all along. I'm not going to pretend like I never do that. But you do need to know, for instance, when they start going off on some of these questions, you do need to know what are the principles involved. What is the history of these kinds of things? Have people tried to do this in the past? Now, if you feel like there's no way that I can possibly learn all this stuff, that is true. You cannot. There's no way that you can possibly learn it. But one of the most fun things to do is to say, you know what? I don't know either. Let's go find it together. It does two things. One, it puts the student again back in the driver's seat in terms of piloting their own education. And second, it gives them a co-pilot that can help them, because you really do know more than they do, although you might not know more about this specific topic. You can relate it back to things that you have personal experience with or knowledge that's part of your personal web, which will be larger than theirs, and give them some guidance. What?
I was gonna say, don't let Chris scare you off. I always tell my mentors, you really only need to do two things. You need to love the kids and stay one step ahead of them. You don't have to be Chris Jones to be a mentor, so don't let him scare you off.
Okay, I am very rarely one step ahead of my kids, but I'm excellent at pretending. I'm a very good actor. But the first thing that Amanda said is the key thing. When you sit in the co-pilot's chair with a child, and you together go through and learn material and dig up new questions and pursue those, what you're showing is, Amanda talked about this earlier, your commitment to your own education, to be excited about it. The reason that kids love my classes is it's not entirely that I love them first. I do, but it's not entirely. The thing is, I'm more excited about it than they are. I've never met a teacher who was as excited about learning as I am. And that's on purpose. I ratchet that up all the time. I don't know everything, but I'm excited about everything. I want to know. I'm dying to know.
That is critical when it comes to mentoring. And I think this is key, Chris, what you're pointing out here is that we at YLA, we don't go out and beg people to teach math because we want math. We don't go out and say, hey, I need a literature class. We put it out there and say, what do you have? What are you passionate about? What are you excited about? What do you know? What skills do you have? And what would you like to come and share? Because the most inspiring mentors are those who are sharing something they're excited about, something they are passionate about. And passionate mentors are so critical. If you think for just 2 seconds, someone in your life that taught you something, who was your favorite teacher, mentor, professor, coach? Who is it? Think about it. I'm sure it comes to mind right now. It is not the teacher who taught from the textbook. It is not the teacher who helped you ACT. It is the teacher who inspired you. It's the teacher who got excited about it. It's the teacher who put their arm out and loved you. It's the teacher who meant something to you because they were learning, they were passionate about what they were teaching, and you got excited about it, even though it might not have been a topic that you were excited about at first. I always tell people, it doesn't matter what you teach. You could teach toilet scrubbing. It doesn't matter. The topic doesn't matter. That's just a vehicle. It's just a vehicle to help them know how to think. It's a vehicle to help them understand who they are. It's a vehicle to help them to critically understand the world around them and to be able to, like Chris said, talk about real things that matter in their lives, look at the problems in the world and find solutions, and then figure out their piece in the world. What is their personal mission? Everyone has genius within them, and just helping them discover their genius is our job as a mentor. I feel like that's critical. Helping them discover their genius and then figure out what God has in store for them.
Yeah, I thank you for the clarification on that. And I think Amanda and I have long sort of shared a philosophy about how this stuff works. I've had a number of her kids in my classes, and I know that she presents that same sort of thing to them. The second thing with a mentor, though, that I was going to bring up, and this is a good segue to that, has nothing to do actually with the material that you're teaching, and Amanda sort of alluded to that. It has to do with the kind of person that you are. I've had a number of parents over the course of the time that I've been doing this tell me that they don't care what my class is about. They just want their kids to be in a class with me. That is, that's a kind of pressure that's a little hard to describe and really hard to live up to. But I try to live up to it all the time. And I make regular mistakes. But I am the sort of person that is not afraid to make those mistakes in the service of trying to do the best job that I can.
Something you said years ago, and if you would share this again, about how you want to be the guy at the crossroads. Do you remember sharing this?
Oh yeah, no, I talk about that all the time. In all the fairy tales, well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And if you look at the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and those sorts of things, in our storytelling, very often as the protagonist goes off into the woods to seek her fortune or save her parents and her two older sisters, because it's always three sisters and it's always the youngest sister that does the right thing, from being eaten by the dragon or whatever it is. They get to a crossroads in the woods, and sitting at the crossroads on a stump is this wizened old dude with a long beard, or a woman with gray hair and a big long nose and a wart or whatever. And the protagonist says, can you help me? I need to know which way to go. And in a good mentor, in good Alice in Wonderland fashion, will say that depends a good deal on where you want to get to. But then when the student inevitably says, well, I don't know where I want to get to, then the answer is always sit down on the log with me, let us share some food, and let's talk about it. Let's figure out where you want to go, what you want to do. And typically that leads in surprising directions. I think my job as a mentor is to be the person sitting on that stump. And in order to make that work, it doesn't matter so much what I look like, and it doesn't even really matter so much what I know, but it does matter a great deal how much I care and what sort of person I am. If I cannot be trusted, my students will not learn from me. If I am not myself, not curious, if I do not model the right behavior, my students will not learn from me. And if I do not care about them more than I care about me, my students will not learn from me. I've found this to be true at every level that I've taught, from the youngest kids all the way up to, and in my congregation, my job in my congregation is I'm the music leader for the youngest kids in the congregation. I'm the primary chorister. We do make a joyful noise. I will not guarantee that you will see what you might call reverence all the time. But I guarantee the kids are locked in on what we're doing and they're excited to do it. And they know that I love them and that I love the Savior. They know that. Beyond that, all the other stuff is, Amanda, I think so eloquently said, it doesn't really matter. It's just a tool. You will only learn what you want to learn. You will only learn what you care about learning. But you can infuse students with a desire to learn. The easiest way to do that, and maybe the only way to do it, is to be on fire with it yourself. Marcus Aurelius, the last of the 5 good emperors, who died about 180 AD, wrote a book called Meditations, which is not really a book. It's really just sort of his journal, some notes that he made to himself about what kind of a person he wanted to be. And in one of those places, he says something that in Latin translates loosely to, if your fire is hot enough, everything is fuel. And if you think about that, that's true. There are fires that are so hot that it doesn't matter what you throw into them, all they do is burn hotter. That's the kind of thing we want from our students. And look, trying to get it out of a 14-year-old is next to impossible. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not as if every kid who comes into my class, and Cassie and Elizabeth are laughing here because they've had kids in my class, okay, when they were 14. And some of those kids got lit on fire by what happened in that class. And for some of them, my job was just to keep the coals warm, not to pour water on it, not to put it out, but just keep it warm enough that there was always maybe the hint that there was something more, that there was something out there that their kids had not experienced.
And you made a huge difference in their lives. My kids still say that you're their favorite mentor, which is fantastic, and they love you.
I love them back, and it says actually more good things about them than it does about me. But they're the three ladies who are on my camera over here. They have very, very different kids. Extraordinarily different kids. And as a mentor, you pretty much just have to take them as they come. My experience is that if I don't try to shape them, if I let them sit on the stump and we just talk, that at some point they will say, well, what would you do? What did you do? And sometimes I don't have great answers for that, but almost always there's an example somewhere in history or something from the scriptures or something will come to mind. Your job as a mentor really is to be ready when the opportunity presents itself. And it will present itself. Our God is very good about making sure that when the student is ready, that the master appears.
So true. I know we're like kind of running out of time, so I'm going to kind of push this along for a second.
That was it. That was finished with that. So,
Chris, you're awesome. And I may turn back over to you. So why are we homeschooling? Why are we trying to build a YLA community? Why do I spend nearly 40 to 60 hours a week doing this? It's because of what Chris just said. Because I want my kids to have mentors and leaders and people around them to help them figure out who they are, find their genius, and be successful in their lives and be an impact for good in the world. And that's what we're building. I'm going to run through a few slides here. Here we go. What is the difference between a YLA community and just a homeschool co-op? Well, there's kind of a lot of things, but I'm going to quickly run through a few. First of all, most co-ops, they require all of the moms to teach all the classes, lead all the field trips, do everything, and everyone gets overwhelmed and burnout is high. The second thing is that you have a lot of little kids running around and the older kids get tired of them and then they start begging to go to school. Many of you have probably experienced that. YLA communities, we use mentors like Chris to help with the teaching and the mentoring and that part. So the scholar school part is not just moms teaching. We have lots of community members like Chris and other professionals or people in the community that have something to share. This year, we have a professional ballroom teacher that's coming to our class. We also had a college professor come and teach a decoding and ciphering class for us. So we're not just relying upon our mom power because mom power can only go so far. And then you run out, right? And if you want quality mentoring in your scholar classes, you have to have quality mentoring. It will not work without it. If the students, like Chris said, are not inspired, engaged, and feeling like they are growing and thriving in your class, they will bail. They will want to go to somewhere else. They're going to go somewhere else. And you'll find that when they start turning 12, 13, that's when they start begging to go to school or do something else because of a couple reasons. One, they want more friends, right? They want a community around them. And two, they need other witnesses. That's the only reason, that's the only word I can come up with. They need someone like Chris to say the same thing that mom said in a different way so that they can understand it, because sometimes they just don't want to listen to us anymore. So YLA communities, we use the leadership model, like we talked about before. We use mentors. And I'm just going to kind of run through this. We talked about who is a mentor. The 7 keys of great teaching come from the Thomas Jefferson education model. Classics, not textbooks. Teaching from a textbook is not necessarily terribly bad. It's just not inspiring. How many of you like to read textbooks for fun? How many of you enjoyed it in high school? How many of you remember the stuff you read in your textbooks in high school or college? You just don't. The things you remember are the conversations you have with people like Chris Jones about, well, why did they do it this way? And what could we have done differently? And how does that apply to me? And how does that apply to my world? Those are the kind of things they're going to remember. So the classics are big. And then if I can remember how to do this, what is a classic? So there's a lot of talk we could do about what is a classic. There's classics in everything. There's classics in music. There's classics in art. There's classics in literature. There's actually classics in cars, classics in video games, classics in just about anything. Really, a classic is just something that you return to and you get something from it every time. And Chris and many other people are classic mentors. People return because they gain something from it and become a better person every time. And that's what truly makes a classic. But what's a classic to me might not mean it's a classic for you. Wizard of Oz may be on the classic list, but it wouldn't be on my personal one. It's terrible. So anyway, back to the 7 keys. Mentors, not professors. So professors are just regurgitating information. Here, take it in, take a test. Mentors stop and say, where do you want to go? Who do you want to become? How can I help you figure that out? And have conversations that are going to be meaningful in their lives. The next one is to inspire, not require. This one trips a lot of people up because they say, well, how can you not ever require anything of your kids? Well, no, it's not like never require anything. It's more like inspire them to want to do the things you're asking them to do. So we could talk more about that, but I'm going to kind of move on. If you need more information on that, read the book, talk to Chris, call me, we can talk. The next thing is structuring time, not content. So rather than setting every minute aside, oh, we're going to do math from 10 to 10:30. We're going to do art from 10:30 to 12:30. Oh, we're going to do setting that kind of a schedule is going to burn you out really, really fast. But structuring your time, saying we're doing school from 9 to noon. And then what does that constitute? It might not be the lesson plan you thought. It might be a conversation instead. It might be that somebody needs something that you weren't ready, you didn't know that they needed at the moment. So structuring your time for learning, not necessarily all the content. The next thing is quality, not conformity. At YLA, quality is important to us. We are more concerned about the quality of the mentors and the quality of the content in the classes, the quality of the experiences that our kids are having, not necessarily does it conform with the state requirements for our kids to graduate. Most of us don't care. We really want our kids to become wonderful human beings and be able to reach their potential. And that does not always mean that we conform to somebody else's standards. The next one is simplicity, not complexity. The more simple, the better. This read, write, do projects and discuss. If that happened in every single class, you're reading, you're writing about it, you're doing a project and you're discussing it. That's the basis of every learning experience. You as an adult do this all the time. If you wanted to learn something right now, what would you do? You're going to read about it. You might write about it. You're going to figure out a project to learn about it and then discuss it with someone who knows more than you. We do it all the time. It's a natural, simple cycle of learning. And when our kids figure that out, they can learn anything. The last one is you, not them. That's where this comes in, where Chris was talking about, you kind of have to be prepared and know some stuff, but let me set you at ease just a little bit. You really only need to be one step ahead. And by nature of your age, you are one step ahead. So just know that. The second part is I have a friend, and Chris and Cassie and these guys know that her too. Monica Carpenter is a fantastic mentor in that she decides what she wants to learn about, and then she offers a class about it. That doesn't mean she knows about it. That means she wanted to learn about it. So she's excited about it. She's passionate about it. She learns a whole bunch about something and then brings it to class each week. Goes home, learns a bunch more and brings it to class the next week. And that's how she does her classes. So it doesn't mean that you have to have this whole well of knowledge already. But if you're excited about learning about it and you're willing to put in some work to learn about it and be a step ahead of them, you can have a very meaningful class. Leadership isn't something that just happens to you. It's a choice to pay the price to develop your own talents, to use classics, mentors, hard work, and faith to become great. And isn't that what we want for our kids? We really want that, right? We want them to choose it, because if you force it, I will tell you right now, it won't work. Satan's plan on any level doesn't work. You're never going to force a kid to be educated. They have to choose it. And your job is to inspire, encourage, and love them. And when they choose it, they will go beyond your wildest dreams. I've seen it over and over. I could give you thousands of examples. Within the YLA communities, we do require some things. Volunteering is part of that. Parent responsibility is to give a minimum of 5 hours of service, which is really easy to get. And on this slide, it gave you some ideas, right? Cleaning the building, setting up, acting as a treasurer, volunteer coordinating for an activity, fundraising. There's so many things within the community. And sometimes it's as easy as making decorations for one activity. It's really easy to get hours, but because we are just a community of families, we don't have money. Nobody gets paid to do this. No one's paying me to put in 40 hours a week. I do it because I love my kids. I love your kids. I love this country, and I want to prepare youth to be meaningful leaders in the community. And that's why we're all here working together to do those things and to support each other in our homeschooling and our parenting. So paying class fees. I don't know how much you guys are going to go over. I know there's a parent meeting coming up and they're going to go over most of this a lot more in detail. But there's a membership fee once a year that basically covers our operational costs. That's going to be the rent, the insurance, paper goods for the Scholar School, and a few things. But then your class fees will be paid individually to your mentor. So your classes run on a free market system similar to college. Each class will have a description, who's teaching, and how much they're charging. Sometimes that money is simply a $20 donation for supplies, and the teacher is volunteering their time. Sometimes there's mentors who they are professionals and they're relying on this income for their families, and this is their livelihood, and they charge more. But I'll tell you right now, they're usually worth it and they will pay it. I have a class right now that is $300 a semester. It's a physics class, but the mentor is so fantastic. Every kid wants in his class and will pay the fee, and they work to earn their own fees to do it. So don't let sticker shock scare you. My kids have learned that, and this is an interesting thing. My kids, they know that mom doesn't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of resources. And so they go get jobs and they pay for their classes because they want to be there, because they chose their education, because they're excited about being in the classroom with Chris Jones, because they want to be there so bad. They're willing to work a job to pay the fee to go to the class. How many teenagers do you know who will do that? So highly recommended reading, Thomas Jefferson Education, pick it up. It will change your world. No, it's not the end all. No, it's not a Bible. No, it's not the only way to do things. It's just a philosophy with some great principles in it that will guide you through teaching your high schoolers and help you if you're going to be joining a YLA community. It really is the foundation of the Scholar School. Libraries of Hope is a really great Catch the Vision course. They have a fantastic library and curriculum and all kinds of things that will help you, and most of it's free. I think that is about it, other than we want to support you. Our YLA communities are here to support families. We're here to support your homeschooling, not replace it. You can choose into one class or you can choose into a whole day. You can come to some activities or you can come to every single one. We're here to support families. We're here to support education. We're supporting everyone's faith. Not everyone is the same faith in YLA communities. We are come together on Christian beliefs. We do not discourage or talk ill of anyone's beliefs or religious views at our schools or their choices. Many families have some kids in public school. Many families have kids who are doing part-time or online. So we are here for everyone. If we can support families in supporting their children in their educational path, then we will. That's what we do. We do provide community, but the Scholar School is our focus. The community surrounds the Scholar School, but at the center of our community is the Scholar School, because those kids, those teenagers, those 12 and up, those kids are the ones who need the most support right now. They need the most quality mentors. They need to be inspired. They need to figure out where their genius is. Those are the kids that need it the most. And so we focus there. The younger kids are, yes, we love them and we support them. And we do have some junior YLA communities, but they're run by a completely different leadership team. And I'm not going to get into all of the whys, but mostly because if we focus on the juniors, it gets bottom heavy really fast and the quality of the Scholar School goes down. But if we focus on the Scholar School and then the juniors come up around it in the community, then it's more supportive of what we're trying to do with our teams. So we encourage youth and families to be inclusive of others outside of our homeschool community. We want to supplement your children with what they need to be successful through the scholar years and beyond. So I know we're kind of like heading into the 9 o'clock hour, but I will sit on here for a few minutes and answer questions if you have anything for me or Chris, or if Beth and Cassie, if you have anything else you'd like to touch on.
Has Chris already left?
No, he's here.
Thank you, Chris. I think that was very inspiring.
There are some questions in the chat. Let me see really quick. Who hires the mentors? Okay, so first of all, we don't hire them. We do applications for class proposals. So if I wanted to teach at YLA Logan, say I was a dance teacher, I would submit a class proposal, and usually the leadership team will review all the class proposals. They do interviews with people they don't know usually, and then they choose to put a schedule together. And if your class is chosen to go into the schedule, then the kids will register for classes. And if it doesn't fill, you'll usually set like a minimum, like I need a minimum of 5 kids to teach this class. If it only gets 3, then it will drop off the schedule, but you usually get an option whether or not you want to take the class with only 3. But it is the leadership team who usually chooses which classes go into the schedule. Where can we see who is offering classes? So right now we are gathering class proposals, and because YLA Logan is so new, they don't have their class schedule yet. That's being gathered right now. So if you're looking at offering a class, you'll submit a class proposal. Once all the class proposals are in, a schedule will go out, and then it will be on the website. So we've created a general website called YLAcommunities.com. If you go there, in fact, I will show you right now. If you go to YLAcommunities.com, this is our general website, and has all the information about YLA Communities. In fact, we're going to add probably this video and the slideshow presentation and a few more things. This is kind of about us information, mentoring, how to mentor, lots of information here, frequently asked questions, and a lot of other things. But if you come down to these ones down here, these forms are interest forms if you're interested in participating at a location. But then if you click on, say, let's see, Logan here, it will take you to their page for the Logan group. And on their page, once their schedule is all completed, it'll be right here on the bar, and you'll be able to see. I will show you my page really quick so you can see what that will look like. So YLA Mount Pleasant right now, if you go here, if you go here on a public side and look at the class schedule, you can see which classes are being offered, but it does not give you the option of looking at all the details right now because you have to log in to see those. Once you log in and you click on that same button, then you come down here, Native Traditional Skills. Now all the class information shows up. You can see all the information, how much it costs, what time it's being offered, who the mentor is. You can click on the mentor and see more about them. And so YLA Logan will have that option as soon as they have their class proposals in. So if you're thinking about teaching, get those class proposals in. Beth, do you have a class proposal on your webpage?
Yes, Misty's got that
right here.
set up
Looking
there.
for an opportunity to mentor, click here to submit a class proposal. So it's right here. So if you go to just the YLA Communities and click on Logan, and they've got it there. So, and it should be the same for all of the other ones as well. Let me see if I can go back to the chat, maybe. See if there's another question. When you say 12 and up, does that mean kids can attend the school year they turn 12, or do they need to be 12 at the start of the school year? That's a good question. We have toyed with this a lot. And over the years, as we have done it, every time we drop the age, we regret it. Let me just tell you, a lot of times we think our kids are ready because we think our kids are more mature than they are. And as parents, we want them to be. But the reality is the hard 12 line is so critical because even a lot of those 12s are really not ready until they're starting to turn 13. When they come into scholar school situation, a lot of kids from homeschooling come from a background of I've been home with mom I've been learning online, or I've been at a public school. And that's not always a great shifting experience coming into a scholar school where there's no grades. There's no real assignments in that, like they have to do it or they're going to get a bad grade and then mom and dad are going to get mad. There's none of that pressure. They're suddenly free. They are free to choose their class. They're free to do their homework if they want to or not. And there's a lot of freedom in that. But as many of you know, like with freedom comes not only a huge responsibility, but also we kind of do this number, trying to figure out, how do I be free? How do I choose my own stuff? And that takes some time. So we don't allow anyone under 12 to come to our group. They have to be 12 by the day we start class, or by August 1st usually. And I promise you will be grateful, because when you get the kids in there who are not ready, then it becomes actually really hard for you and really hard for them. So give them that time that they need to prepare and get ready. Usually there's a JYLA program. If there's a JYLA program, I highly suggest that. If not, find a co-op or a homeschool group for your younger kids until they're ready. But get involved in the community. If you can get involved in the community now, that helps them catch a vision of what's coming. And that's a great way for them to ease in. Sometimes we'll offer like a pre-scholar class, and that's like for like the 11, 12s who aren't quite ready for scholar classes. But that's totally up to the individual groups, whether they're going to do that or not, and if it will be part of the regular day or on a different day or in a different place. So, all right. If you don't have a child yet scholar age, can families still join the juniors? So no, here's why. If we let every junior family come, you'll have 500 juniors. That's the simple answer. Because like my community this year, we started with like 30 kids and now we have 130 kids and they all have 5 siblings. So if I just let siblings in, count that. How many siblings do I have? Yeah, we have like 200 juniors at our group right now, and it's just siblings of the scholars. So it's really a numbers game. So we love you. Yes, we want you to be involved, but we can't manage every single person. There's a lot of homeschool groups out there, clubs, field trip days, junior groups, mom clubs, park days. There's so many things like that. And if you have a need, here's what I tell everyone. If you have a need in your family, fill it by creating something to fill the need for you and other people and invite them along. That's how YLA got going. I had a need and I decided what I needed for my kids, and I built that, and it filled a need for a lot of other people. When my kids were younger, if my kids needed out of the house, I would start a park day. If my kids were working on reading, we started a book club. If my kids were getting bored and needed out, we did field trips and we invited everyone. One time my kids decided they wanted to learn sports, but they didn't really want to play on teams. So we created a homeschool family sports club, and we showed up every Saturday morning and just played sports together as families. If you have a need within your family, figure out a way to fill it and invite others along for the ride. I guarantee you'll fill somebody else's need too, and it will give you what you need and it'll give them what they need. And it's a super awesome synergy that can happen. So don't just wait for something to come along, just figure out what you need and go build it. And then when you're ready, YLA is here to fill the need for your scholars. All right, am I missing any other questions, or is there anything else that you guys are welcome to unmute and raise your hand? You don't have to turn your video on if you don't want to. I don't see any other questions. Cassie and Beth, do you want to just talk a little bit about your meeting coming up on Friday and what's happening with your Logan group?
Yes, that's me. Hey, Cassie. Yeah, we're meeting at the Whittier Center from 6 o'clock on Friday, and we'd love anybody who's interested to come and learn more of what we're doing and ask questions, and it'd be great for you to join us. We really love people who are excited about doing scholar things for the youth, making a community here, like what Amanda and Chris have been talking about. We love that. We've seen that happen in other places. Misty Meyer and Cassie Carnes and we've all seen Scholar Schools work in other places, and we've, just moved to Cache Valley a couple of years ago, and we'd love to make that happen again here and include other youth. We've already fallen in love with a lot of people's youth as we've done different activities together here, and we'd love to provide more. Yeah, so come Friday, or if you can't come Friday, get onto the websites and send in interest forms and let us know that you're interested.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you, Chris, for coming and being a part of sharing yourself with all of us.
Of course, good luck, everyone, and we all wish you the best in your homeschooling and with your scholars, and especially with your YLA community happening in Logan.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.
Thank